Hello, my beautiful people. Hello and welcome. It's so good to have you here at AFG Manifesto Podcast, partner with Spiritual Tea Podcast. I am your host here today. My name is Alicia F. Griffin, and again, I am your host here today, here for both of the podcasts, is to have this interfaith dialogue, this interfaith conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion inside our churches, inside our religion, inside Christianity, and what does that truly really mean for the marginalized and for the oppressed people, for the people whose backs are against the wall. What does that really mean? And so here we're having an interfaith dialogue. Thank you again for joining me here today. Before we get started, just a reminder to please be sure to follow us on social media. You can follow us and you can find us. All you would just need to do is just go to social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, so forth, and you would just type in Spiritual Tea Podcast. So with that, I look forward to hearing from you on our social media accounts there. So with that, let's open up. And as we open up, I would like to quote Nelson Mandela. As we open up, I would like to quote Nelson Mandela. And the quote is, you will see it here on our screen there. The quote is, education is the most powerful weapon. It is the most powerful weapon that we can use to change the world. And so that's what we're doing. Education begins with conversation, and this is what we are. And that's what we're doing today. That's the purpose of interfaith dialogue. So before we get started with our community space that we're building here, one of the important things is to have agreements. Power of agreements of our interfaith dialogue, power of agreements of our space, because again, we want to be sure to create safe space, a safe community where everybody is welcome and opinions and words are all welcome. But we also have to have those agreements to be sure to take care of ourselves and to take care of our community in our space here. So if you can just refer to the screen right here of our agreements, and let's just go over our agreements really briefly here. First agreement, treat everything you hear as an opportunity to learn and grow. Seek unity, not separation. That's not the goal here. Be positive, non-judgmental, and open to new ideas. Speak your truth without blame or judgment. Be intrigued by the difference you hear. Expect to be surprised. I'm in this work full time, so I'm always surprised by the dialogue and the conversations, because what we're doing is we're having courageous conversations. So I'm always intrigued and I'm always surprised. So expect to be surprised. Be generative and use yes and thinking, not yes but. So use yes and thinking. And we'll go over that more as well, just the dialogue of that. So that's just so we can keep an open mind. Yes and thinking. Yes and da-da-da. Don't do the yes but da-da-da, right? Listen to understand. That's the main important thing. Listen to understand, and listen with care instead of building your story. So listen to perspectives. Listen to the different perspectives. Listen to just what people have to hear. For right now, it'll just be me, but just listen with care instead of building your story, instead of trying to think of what your story is. Meaning is in the listener, is inside the listener. Listen from the we perspective, but speak from the I perspective. And of course, our last agreement is always to be continued. We can always add on to our agreements. We can always take away from our agreements. But the first important agreement is building a safe community and to be building capacity building and building awareness. One of the first things is self-care. So just make sure that you take care of yourself and take care of your mind. So that's the most important thing. I want to share a couple of verses before I begin with our dialogue, our interfaith dialogue. So I want to share a couple of verses from Proverbs 31, verse 8 through 9 of the New Living Translation Bible, the New Living Translation Bible. But up here on the screen, you will see from the, I think it's the NIV Bible version, if I'm not mistaken, but I probably am mistaken. But the verse is right here as well. But I'm reading from the New Living Translation Bible. So the verse says, "Speak up. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. Yes, speak up for the poor and the helpless, and see that they get justice." See that they get justice. Powerful Bible verse there. Powerful Bible verse. So I thought that was important to share in the beginning. Okay. Our last episode. So let's real briefly just bullet point summary of our last episode here, our last segment here with AFG Manifesto Podcast. Just bullet point summary of what we went through. I felt like this is the time to transform Spiritual Tea Podcast as well as AFG Manifesto Podcast to focus on interfaith dialogue, about advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion, specifically inclusion and diversity inside our churches. Also, as well as equity, because we also want to be equitable. We want to be equitable in our everyday lives. But most importantly, we also want to be equitable. We want to feel worthy. We want to feel value no matter what we look like, where we come from, what our culture is, what habits we have, what we are into as far as just relationships and so forth, what our goal is, what we're looking for. Like, we all want to be included inside God's kingdom, inside the church. Most importantly, we shouldn't have to worry about socioeconomic status. We shouldn't have to worry about our status. We shouldn't have to worry about our income. We shouldn't worry about what color we are, what we look like, our culture, and so forth. So the dialogue about, again, advancing DEI in our churches, and the meaning, again, of interfaith dialogue, as you can see here. There you go. The meaning of interfaith dialogue refers to cooperative, constructive, and positive interaction. Did you hear that? Cooperative, constructive, and positive interaction between people of different religious traditions, faith, between people from different religious faiths or spiritual or humanistic beliefs at both the individual and institutional levels. So that's what we're having here. We're having interfaith dialogue right now. And this is the focus and goal here. For our podcast here, to have interfaith dialogue, to begin listening and learning and sharing and transforming, to have cooperative, constructive, and positive interactions, courageous conversations, right? So AFG Manifesto Podcast, partner with Spiritual Tea Podcast, is a space to number one, first and foremost, build a community who is willing to be uncomfortable. Who is willing to be uncomfortable and have courageous conversations about microaggression in our churches, in our church institutions, in our religion, in our churches and Christianity, and what does that mean? And so that's what the main thing is to build space, a community who is willing to be uncomfortable and have those courageous conversations. So you remember our agreements. Right? You remember our agreements. So last time, on our last episode when we met, I shared a story about how a simple invitation to have interfaith dialogue can have radical effects and transform our way of thinking. And the story was about Derek Black, who was once the heir to lead the white nationalist group, a white nationalist group. His godfather was David Duke of the KKK. That was Derek Black's godfather. And so while Derek was in college, a few peers found out about his white nationalist ties, and they began to exclude him. They began to exclude him because of that, because of his beliefs, all except for one, which was Matthew Stevenson. And Matthew Stevenson was an Orthodox Jew. He was a traditional Jew, but he had invited Derek to Friday night dinner. He had invited Derek to this Friday night dinner with a mix of his diverse peers. These interfaith, so what happened is that these interfaith dialogues made a radical effect inside Derek's life, inside his life. He began to realize by hearing different perspectives. He renounced his white nationalist ties, and he apologized. He apologized for any harm that he contributed to. So that was the story that I shared last week. For this episode, I would like to share some of my readings from Jesus and the Disinherited by Howard Thurman. I recommend that book. If you haven't read that book, I 100% recommend that book. I'm in process of reading the book right now. So I want to share just some of the readings from Jesus and the Disinherited by Howard Thurman. So in chapter 1, Howard Thurman, what he did is he shared a story. He shared a story from 1938 about when he served as a chairman of a delegation sent overseas on a pilgrimage of friendship. And he was invited again. He was invited, a simple invite to have interfaith dialogue. So he was invited by the hosting Hindu principal to have coffee one day. And this is back in 1938, to have coffee one day. And this was when a critical issue was brought to Mr. Thurman's attention, to Howard Thurman's attention. This is when a critical issue was brought up to him over this simple invite. Critical issue, critical perspective. Just side note, I do this again for talk about advancing DEI and within an organization. I do this full time, and one of the things when I first began to get into this line of work and having discussions and conversations, one of the things that always stood out to me is the key thing to change and the key thing to courageous conversations and dialogue and advancing diverse equity and inclusion in organizations is to hear at least 4 to 6 different perspectives of diversity, equity, and inclusion to really understand to build the equitable framework, to build the equitable asset framework. That's what you want to do. The equitable asset framework to advancing diverse equity and inclusion. And so again, a simple invite to interfaith dialogue, just to hear someone else's perspective. So this is what happened for Mr. Thurman. In 1938, he was invited by a Hindu principal over coffee. And this is when he really realized that there's a crucial issue here. There's a crucial issue here. So the Hindu principal asked Mr. Thurman, what was he doing? He asked him, what was he doing over there in their country? See, because he understood, the Hindu principal understood the purpose of the pilgrimage of friendship. He understood that. He understood like that was what he was there for. But what he wanted to know, the Hindu principal, what he wanted to know was, what was Mr. Thurman doing in their country? And he went on to explain his question. by saying this. This is what he was saying. This is what he said. More than 300 years ago, your forefathers were taken from the western coast of Africa as slaves. The people who were dealt in the slave traffic were Christians. One of your famous Christian hymn writers, Sir John Newton, made his money from the sales of slaves to the New World. He is the man who wrote How Sweet the Name Jesus Sounds, and famously Amazing Grace. And there may be others, but these are the only ones I know. This is what the Hindu principle is saying. The name of one of the famous British slave vessels was Jesus. He continued, the Hindu principle continued. The men who brought the slaves were Christians. Christian ministers, quoting the Christian apostle Paul, gave the sanction of religion to the system of slavery. Some 70 years or more ago, you were freed by a man who was not a professing Christian, but rather the spearhead of certain political, social, and economic forces, the significance of which he himself did not understand. During all the periods since then, you have lived in a Christian nation in which you are segregated, lynched, and burned. Even in the church, I understand there is segregation. One of my students who went to your country sent me a clipping telling about a Christian church in which the regular Sunday worship was interrupted so that many can join a mob against one of your fellows. When he had been caught and done to death, they came back to resume their worship of their Christian God. He went on to continue to say, I am Hindu. I do not understand. Here you are in my country, standing deep within the Christian faith and tradition. I do not wish to seem rude to you, but sir, I think you are a traitor to all the darker peoples of the earth. I am wondering what you, an intelligent man, can say in a defense of your position. And that's how the Hindu principle ended his explanation of his question. What are you doing here in my country? So currently, there are masses of people, the marginalized, the disinherited, the dispossessed, right? There are masses of people, the marginalized, the disinherited, the dispossessed, with their backs are against the wall. Their backs are against the wall. So what does our religion right now? What does our religion truly say to them? What does our religion say to the marginalized, the disinherited, the dispossessed? What does it say to them, to the people with their backs currently against the wall? Not what is counseled for them to do or for them to do for others, but what does our religion offer to meet their own needs? So the importance of Jesus to the masses of people, the marginalized, the disinherited, right? With the people with their backs against the wall right now, is pivotal. It's pivotal, and it has lacked due to unfortunate corruption of the missionary impulse, which is the heartbeat of the Christian religion. So Mr. Thurman asked this question. Why is it that Christianity seems impotent to deal radically and therefore effectively with the issues of discrimination and injustice on the basis of race, religion, gender, sexuality, and national origin? Why is that? See, Mr. Thurman felt that This is the one question which us as individuals and groups who face profound social and psychological displacement constantly ask. So I'm going to come to a close. With that same question for us. Why is it that Christianity seems impotent to deal radically and therefore effectively with the issues of discrimination and injustice on the basis of religion, race, gender, sexuality, and national origin? I'm going to close with that question, and so we can think about that question. And I would like to hear your thoughts. So homework, right? Homework here. I would truly love to start the interfaith dialogue. And I would love to hear your thoughts and your perspectives around that question. So if you're watching now on Facebook or on YouTube, if you're watching now, please comment right here on what that actually means to you, to start that interfaith dialogue, to create this safe community, this safe space, so we can begin to learn and educate. And just that simple invite that I'm asking you right now, because again, a simple invitation can lead to radical changes and effects in our lives. So I invite you to comment if you're watching. If you're listening to our podcast, Spiritual Tea Podcast or AFG Manifesto Podcast, send me a message. You can visit our website, social media, but you can visit our website at www.spiritual-t.net. And you can leave a message there on our website. Honestly, our website is our Facebook page. So you can just leave the comments on our Facebook page, or you can send a direct message using Facebook Messenger. We'll get it either way. But I invite you to comment and to start the dialogue and the conversation. Before we close here, I feel that it's very important before we close to take a moment to check in with ourselves, because we went over a lot. That's self-inflicting. So I want to take a moment to check in with ourselves, because we covered a lot today in our interfaith dialogue, and we want to always practice self-care, correct? Self-love, correct? So take a quick moment with me now, to close your eyes. Just to close your eyes and to focus on your breathing. Close your eyes and just focus on your breathing. Yes. Remove all those thoughts. Just remove everything. Just remove thoughts from your mind as you breathe, and just focus on your breathing for a moment. Just focus on your breathing, right? And only focus. And now only focus on what centers you at this particular moment in life. What centers you at this particular moment in life. And just focus on that. And just focus on your breathing and focus on what centers you. Right, just breathe. Yes. We always practice self-care, right? So that was nice. I enjoyed this. I truly enjoyed this. This was such a joy. Thank you for joining me today here at AFG Manifesto Podcast and a Spiritual Tea Podcast. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Sharing this space that we created in this moment with you. It is an honor and it was a pleasure, and I truly appreciate you. Again, please be sure to subscribe, follow, comment, share. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, Alexa, Amazon. It doesn't matter. You can follow us on all of our podcasts that's out there. We are on them. as well as through our website, www.spiritual-t.net. And with that, many blessings.